Hey, welcome to this planning session of the Clean New Deal. Myself, my colleagues, Kevin Howard and Roseanne Rabiola Mile, and I'm very excited. It's Sunday, February 18th, 2024 at approximately noon Mountain Time, which is the region I live in, and I'm talking to folks in the Pacific Standard Time. And I hope everybody's having a great Sunday, but it's a chaotic Sunday at that. And Kevin, I've got to hand it to you, man. I just read your one sheet on the strategy, and I think it's absolutely fantastic. I think it incorporates everything that I and you and I think pretty much Roseanne have agreed to at the beginning. Obviously, the semantics of the details of the layout and how they are important are the objective of this meeting, and there is no time to lose. I loved what you said in our last conversation, that we're flying an airplane and building it at the same time. And there's a lot of details to work out, but I wonder if we might just have, for the three of us, real quick, kind of an opening sort of salvo to this conversation, kind of like shall we say, what's the word I'm looking for? Kind of a declarative approach to how we're seeing things, just to kind of set the tone for where we are. And is it okay if I ask you guys to start, and maybe I'll follow it before we get into the semantics of the detail? Is that cool?
I'm good with that. That's great.
Okay, so if you don't mind, what I'm going to do, because we always go first, and sometimes we talk over Roseanne because she's busy, and I don't want people to think that we're mansplaining to Roseanne, because she's the heartbeat of this whole thing, and she really has been just this incredibly powerful vestige. When I consider you, Roseanne, is Mother Teresa, and I think of you.
Florence Nightingale, yeah, I know.
But I think of you because I mentioned this in one of my truth bombs recently. I'm not a religious guy, but I use a lot of religious parables because they're useful, and I think that we can all relate to them. And I don't think there's much has changed to humanity from its inception. I mean, when I think of a prophet, I don't think of Patrick Lovell. I think of Martin Luther King. I think of Moses. I think of, even though Moses is probably fictional and whatever, but
John the Baptist.
John the Baptist, whatever. All of these incredible ideas throughout history, but the one I could relate to in my life was David Byrne from the Talking Heads, who used to always say, "Same as it ever was," and that was off the heels of, "Oh my God, what have I done?" I mean, people with incredible insight, artists, novelists, politicians, leaders, whatever throughout the year. What you have is you always talk about facts and food. And what I get from that is you're providing sustenance. When I think of the whole idea, and what is the when you go to church, particularly in the Catholic Church, and you get the matzah, the unleavened bread, the cracker, to think about Jesus.
Communion, yeah.
Communion, right? Communion. The idea is that the whole thing is sustenance, right? For your soul, your mind, body, and your soul. And yet you do this every day in your real life with people that are really in desperate straits. A lot of people that are homeless, a lot of people that need housing, clothing, and food. And you do this on a daily basis. And so when you're talking about facts and food, you're talking about sustenance. Did you read Kevin's one sheet on his ideas for the Clean New Deal?
And I commented.
Okay, can you just give us an opening salvo on who you are and why it's important from where you're sitting and what you see in your daily basis, given what I just laid out, to get us to a place called the Clean New Deal and how we're going to do it? What does it mean to you?
Over 3 years ago, when I saw episode 1, not the whole docuseries, episode 1 of The Con, it put everything together for me. And when I say it put everything together for me, my whole life had been spent in service to people, in service to going over, under, around, through, behind, in front of the establishment. The Con took and solidified how we do what I was trying to do. Okay. And I didn't even have to watch the whole series. When I watched the whole series, maybe a couple of months after the premiere, because we saw the premiere in August. Okay. And I didn't see the whole docuseries until about, I want to say like January or so. But I was already committed. And then in January, February, you bring in the new Untouchables. Bringing in the new Untouchables gave me the ability to what I call look into the heads, what's going on in Art Wilmarth, Mark Dan, Tom Murphy, Michael Winston, Lori Noble, all the Black women that you had, along with Beth Jacobson. Beth Jacobson is someone we don't talk about for very much. But the insurance piece that the first foreclosers get, that got when you got foreclosed on, when you stop paying, this wondrous, crazy thing, stop paying. Why did they all tell you to stop paying? So that they could collect the insurance and make their money and get rid of that frickin' mortgage. Okay, it's so simple. That didn't take a lot of words, did it? What they did with the insurance and the foreclosing. Why all these well, of course, right? A rolling loan gathers no loss. Those are simple things that I think people would understand. Do they understand? No, they don't get it. They don't get that everybody was told to stop paying. Everybody who stop paying, we can't talk to you. Then after you stop paying, then they won't do this, they won't do that, they won't do the other. And what I said in your statement, Kevin, we can pay for the Clean New Deal whenever we want to. Okay, we're already paying the fucking criminals. Are we not paying the fucking criminals? Is everybody crazy because, oh, look at the debt, look at the debt. Where's that money going? That money is going to criminals who do not take that money and invest it in the people. They are taking the debt. The debt is the public purse. That is the public purse. That public purse can be what everyone needs, and I say deserves. We can do whatever we want, but we don't, because we have chosen to allow the debt to go up, which is not the debt going up is not the bad thing. The debt going up and transferring over here on the other side is the bad thing, because it's going to the criminals. We can say all day long, every day, it's going to the criminals, and people aren't catching on. So I watched Yanis last night, and he's talking about, he's got his group They ask him to be the finance minister. They're all in it together. And what happens? They all sell out. Yanis don't. They all sell out. Okay. That is why when I saw some other things of Yanis, okay, that is why when I got to see Yanis for a couple of minutes face to face on video, the first thing I said to him is, "You got guts." And he smiled and laughed and he said,
Remind everybody how you saw him face to face and you said that.
well, I saw him when you had the call with Yanis and Bill. Okay. So all these things that my messenger colleague over here keeps doing are so, they're my energy, they're my lifeblood, they're my reason to keep going. And if I told you some of the crazy stuff that goes on here, you wouldn't believe it. And I don't even know how I can continue to do it. Okay. But you know what? When I hear his message, when I hear, Kevin, I've watched every Truth Bomb. I have done all the transcripts for the 19 episodes of the new Untouchables. I have talked to, closest is Tom Murphy. I've talked to Paul Pelletier. Richard Bowen is like my buddy. And he says to me, "Roseanne, you get it." Richard frickin' Bowen. I'm nothing compared to what Richard Bowen is and does. This is
Just different, that's all.
That's, but this is my blood. Okay. This is my energy. My bottom line is we could put together all the plans we want. We could say all the words we want. I've told both of you know there are no magic words, and I believe that. Okay. What I do believe is there are bumper sticker phrases, which I kind of am okay with because it actually does get people engaged. Okay. But dump Trump is a bumper sticker. People engage with that, but that's not the kind of thing we're looking for. We're looking for, I always say, meat and potatoes. We're looking for the meat and potatoes that's going to get them so that they can have the wherewithal, and they need the wherewithal. Everybody's not going to have the wherewithal. Everybody's not going to do what we do. Okay. Nobody's going to do it. Well, there may be a few people to the extent that I have done it and continue to do it. And I'm not saying I'm anything special. Okay. My agenda is to save the frickin' planet, make it sustainable, and make people sustainable and not hanging on by their fingertips. That's all I want. I don't need to be no big cheese. I don't need to be nothing. Okay. I just need to have people listen to me when I say, watch the con, absorb it, wrap your head around it, watch the new Untouchables, look up who these whistleblowers are. I've had a couple of people actually have their eyes pop out when I say Richard Bowen. Okay. but not much. Not much. Bill Black, they don't know. Okay. I want to get to the bottom line to get people to come to us. That's what I want. When you have them in the movie theater, then they watch the movie. How do I get them in the theater? How do I get 100 people to come on a call with us? Do you know how many calls I have frickin' scheduled? And we get bupkis. What do? We get 7 million on TikTok. What did they do? Nada. Nothing. Then it gets taken down. Now, we're at 857 subscribers on YouTube. Okay. It's been an uptick in the last, say, week or two. And I find that encouraging because my thought is they're going to what we're doing on Twitter. Okay. And as much as I hate to go all crazy on Twitter and tag people and do all this other kind of stuff, you got to do it. So I'm doing that, and I haven't been able, except for 2 people. I got this woman, her name is Sky, and she's in North Carolina, and she's sharing. And I got 127 people who are on the new Facebook page that I made. It's called The Clean New Deal. And we have to call it not just Clean New Deal. It's in the name, The Clean New Deal LLC. It hasn't been filed yet, but that's going to be the name. The Clean New Deal LLC. I want to bring people there. We're starting out with a group of 127 people. I've invited almost 5,000 people. I can't invite any more people. Okay. I got to get those 127 people to invite 5,000 people. Okay. If I do that, we're at about 200,000 people, and that's not enough. So I'm relying on them now and what I post on the Clean New Deal to energize them, to get them to share, because I can't even invite anymore. There's no more inviting. I just want an army of us. I want an army. I would love to see if I saw 100 people, if I saw 50 people, and there's a biblical thing about that too, and I can't remember it right now, you know, we need an army. We need an army to overcome. Can we overcome the algorithms? I don't know. I don't know. But we got to get out there. We got to get out there. If you look at the new Untouchables, if you look at Paul and you look at Bill, they don't have big followings. The only one who's got the big following is Yanis. Okay. And I think a lot of people follow Yanis because they hate Yanis and they want to see what the hell he's doing. I only look at certain people because I want to see what the hell they're doing, not because I like them. Okay. But all I want to do is get to people. We can do it. We've got close to 500 truth bombs. I go back and I look and I see what are the most popular, and I put those on Twitter. Okay. And I put them on Facebook. I have tried everything I possibly can. Facebook, Instagram, MeWe, Elephant. What's the elephant thing? Okay, there's an elephant one. Mastodon. No, that's what it's called. Mastodon. You know, They're all over. People are all over. How do you get them to frickin' focus? I want people to focus. I want them to focus. I want them to focus like I focus. Okay. Because if they focus like I focus, they will get the message. They'll get the message. If their mind is open, if their mind is shut, if they have atrophy of the brain, I can't do anything for them. I can't do anything for APON and Ajax and all the, what can I do? You know, oh yeah, we're gonna put you on our web page and all this other kind of stuff. They don't do diddly. Okay. What do we get them to do? One message is not, the thing is, they gotta understand how we're all connected and how the truth. When Yanis is talking, everything he said, I can tie everything. Like it hits me in like 3 seconds. Corruption, 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 corruption. It's like learning another, you know what it's like? It's like learning another language. When you understand a joke in Spanish and you don't have to go from, okay, I hear the joke in Spanish. Now I got to hear it in English. Oh, now I understand. No, 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 no. I hear his words. I don't have to go through a translation. It clicks. Okay. There's always that middle part, this translation part. I'm at the point where I can connect all of it. Do I understand every detail that Yanis is talking about? Hell no. Do I get all the detail that you get? No. Him, I'm closer to a little bit. What do I care about? Like Paul said, what about credit default swaps? Who cares? I don't care. They're lying, cheating, deceiving, betraying. That's what they're doing. You don't have to know, but you gotta know, you gotta hear about foreclosure mills and credit default swaps and a rolling loan gathers no law. You gotta know control fraud. You gotta know it for everything to click. That's how do we do it? 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 That's all I need. How do we do it? What do we do?
All right, I'm going to toss it to you, Kevin, in just a second. I just want to use just a brief bridge here. So just quickly, because I know you've been questioning about, am I going to reach out to Yanis again? For the audience, I do have a relationship with Yanis Varafoukis. I've developed it over a couple of years. I actually have a truth bomb on Patrick Level Truth Bombs, the con, that's been seen only by about 1.9 thousand people, I think is the last views that I've seen. And in that truth bomb, there's still unbelievable news. I mean, news that should be front page New York Times news, that should be front page the London Telegraph. It should be all over the freaking world news about the second and third manifestations of not Hank Paulson, who was our former Treasury Secretary, during the Bush administration. That was the first way that we created what it is that I continue to reveal to the American people, which you've rightfully criticized. The criticize, Kevin, isn't the right word. It's a point that you're making, that there's a strategic sort of development that has to get people to the question that Roseanne is bringing. How do you get them to suddenly have this osmosis where all of this information that we've been providing for all of this time, which, as you both know, parallels, even though and I'll say this for everybody that's out there, I'm not 100% connected in terms of the terminology of certain things that Yanis Varafoukis hangs his hat on. But we both see the truth for what it is, and he's infinitely smarter than I am in terms of his education, his PhD, his understanding of the mechanics of what they call the plumbing of the international global banking system and all of those things. I mean, if you want a technocrat who understands everything, Yanis Varafoukis is that. I understand a lot, but the reason I'm bringing this up as a transition is because I sent a spirited and passionate email to Yanis spelling a lot of things out, but more importantly, I provided our recent truth bombs that Roseanne had prefaced. That includes Art Wilmarth, who, if you look at Patrick Level Truth Bombs, the con, you'll see that a gentleman who is the preeminent expert on financial regulation in the United States makes the case that we have to have a new Glass-Steagall, and within the body of that orchestration reveals how we have to end Citizens United. Those two things right there are two marquee positions of what the Clean New Deal has to achieve. Because when you understand Glass-Steagall, America, and the world, and anybody else that's listening to this, we went through everything that we're going through now before World War II, after the Great Depression. This is what created the Great Depression, all of it. The only difference between now and then is technology. It's just much faster and deeper and more versions of the same sort of tricks and deception and trickery and chicanery of finance that operates based on fees, okay? When you understand fees, you understand why they got to keep the ball rolling, because it's money making money through the financialization that Yanis is talking about. But what Yanis ends up with is that Western supposed democracies are a mafiocracy. It's a mafia. And where do you think he got that? Was he saying that before my last discussion with him? No, he wasn't. And I love Yanis. And did he need to credit Patrick Lovell for planting the seed? No, of course not. He was already there. He's just saying it now. See, what happens, especially with academics and intellects, is it's very difficult to use common language and common parlance, because when you have a PhD and you speak in the intellect of academia, especially what Roseanne's pointed out to me, because she deals with all of these academics through MMT the whole time, you run into this thing called altruistic authoritarians, okay, which is another way of saying, look, you get caught up in a model where your money is dependent on you fitting in this sort of scope where you can't speak truth to power. The only ones who actually have are now Yanis and another guy that has frequently, that always captured my attention, I think is one of the go-to guys that we have to get for the Clean New Deal based on what you laid out, Kevin, which is the economist Michael Hudson. Because Michael Hudson has always been saying we have to have a jubilee. We have to have a jubilee. He's been saying that for 15 years because of what Roseanne is talking about in terms of the debt. And it sounds ridiculous until you understand the history, you understand what he studied in anthropology for Harvard University. But he only did that as a side thing after he was like one of the top economists in the world, working for none other than JP Morgan Chase on balance of payments, which led him to understand all of the mechanics of what it is that we're talking about. So when we talk about it, so him to say that we need a debt jubilee, let me tell you, talking about the technocratic details of every aspect of what, lesser people like myself could never in a million years get to. He's just saying straight up that this is unsustainable. It's stupid. And all it is what we've continued to reveal why we arrive at this catch-all platform movement that is almost exactly parallel to what happened during and after the Great Depression that created the New Deal, because we have to have a clean New Deal, which you're going to map out for us. But the final piece of Yanis Varafoukis is we'll see what he does next. But I mentioned this email to him, like I said in our first discussion, Roseanne, you said you've got guts. The first thing I said to him was, I wish you could be the president of the Global Federation, because he's always talking about Star Trek. And for those of us who know Star Trek and know the world, there's just like North American Indians lived with balance and symmetry. There's a way humanity can live with balance and symmetry, but it's not this system that we have, which Yanis and you and I have talked about this, Kevin. Yanis says is not capitalism. It's the next level, which is called techno-feudalism, that's predicated on all the things post-2008. So again, what I want to remind anybody who's listening to this, who's thinking why they might want to join us on the Clean New Deal and what I call a tidal wave populist crusade to purge corruption and drown the fascism it fuels, because that's where I'm coming from. And I'm sorry if that sounds like hyperbole, but we are in a critical situation. And oh yeah, by the way, this didn't happen overnight. We're talking the last quarter century. maybe the last 50 years. But I mean, in terms of the fraud and the cover-ups and the things that higher at the highest levels that made Donald Trump inevitable, that grabs all the oxygen in the room, what we're trying to get you past is all things Donald Trump, to realize that he is regardless if it's intended or not, a distraction racket, so that you can't see something that's monumentally bigger. Monumentally bigger. What did Letitia James say on Friday? That we have solved the riddle of the markets and now justice reigns supreme. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Meanwhile, all of mainstream media is asking questions like, oh my God, can you believe that Donald Trump hyperinflated his assets? Could you believe that he would do this to get? I'm like, are you kidding me? They can't, these guys get paid millions of dollars a year to literally be in context to what we're talking about. They're not even in sixth grade. They are so high school or some sort of, and I'll get to this whole point in a minute, but I got to toss it to you because it's your time to just take us, and then I'll comment last. But you've laid out a structure, a strategy of the Clean New Deal. There's certain things that are important to you that you want to roll out. And I think that it would be great to hear, what your strategy is that aligns with the platform, what you think the priorities should be and why, and then ultimately, maybe because we're building the plane while flying it, make the case to whomever comes across this. Kevin?
Patrick, thank you so much. This is what a great conversation. Yeah, my points, I want to talk about, my point will address the algorithm, and I want to make 2 points. Okay. Believe me, and I was moved by what Roseanne said in terms of how she is immersed in the information that you've put together. Because I too, right, same, and in no way would I say that I have the same kind of knowledge or intimate relationship with this information that Roseanne has had, because she's been shoulder to shoulder, with you for some years now. Relatively, I'm new to this fence, but on my own, and since the time we've been associated, I have spent considerable time, deeply consuming the con, the new untouchables, the truth bombs, right? And so I just want to say one thing about the algorithm, okay? And I want to say one thing about the quality of the information, right? It is not the quality of the information that you've put together. It is not that the information you've put together is not really important and everyone absolutely needs to know it. It is that the information that you've put together challenges the very power that controls the algorithm. And so while people like Alex Jones get hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, take any crackpot out there. The level of vapid nonsense out there that the algorithm is perfectly happy to allow millions of people to associate. If you just let people hover to whatever they want to hover to, okay, but the algorithm is literally suppressing your voice. And it's not the algorithm, the powers that be will not let you. This is what the last 460 truth bombs demonstrate. This is what 7 million views on TikTok demonstrate. This is what, that the $70 trillion facts, right, are going to be suppressed by the people who stole that money, right? So that's one statement. The other thing is, in terms of getting to what Roseanne said, which is at the heart of my proposed strategic pivot, right? How do we get millions and millions of people to learn this information? First and foremost, anytime you're trying to communicate to someone, it's the success of your ability to communicate to them is a function of you understanding where they're coming from. And this is where I think a blind spot has occurred. The net effect of what has happened to the average person in the United States over the last 50 years, it depends on how much of that time you've experienced. But if you've experienced any material period of that time, you've experienced a degradation of your economic choices that was slow, you didn't see it coming, and then progressively you realize you woke up in a worse and worse situation. And then, like most people in a free society, those people started appealing to their government locally or what have you to see what help they can get. And they were given a series of scapegoats and excuses delivered by people who look like them, delivered like people who seem to come from their same situation. Very much like the techniques like the brokers were using in the neighborhoods with Annie Polk, right? Okay. So whether you're talking about, a Bill Clinton who's from rural Arkansas, working class, raised by a single mother, right? You would think, right, he would understand the plight of the white working class in the 90s, right? Okay. So that using that kind of face, using Barack Obama, speaking in terms of, yes, we can, right? And then turning around and doing the same thing John McCain would have done, right? So you're talking to people who have been so profoundly betrayed. They realized over a period long after. So it was like a rape in that you didn't realize you were being taken advantage of until you had been totally tore up from the floor up. You know what I'm saying? And now you're just trying to keep one nostril above the ground, right? Okay. So this is where they are. Now you could look at history and see other economies in a similar situation. Literally, this is Germany in the 1920s. I won't digress, but we know what that led to. Okay. So the people we're talking to, the 80 million people we're talking to, are in a situation where they know damn well that everything, and I'm being candid, is fucked up. They know it. They know it. They do not understand the details of the $70 trillion secret facts. The problem is they're in such dire straits, right? That unless we tell them first how we're going to help them, they have no bandwidth. It is tantamount to a bad joke told slowly. What has happened to most people in America is the worst of worst jokes, right? Yes, they have been conned. The details of the $70,000 facts is an extensive explanation for why. The reason why they have no bandwidth for that is because what they need right now is help. And once they get enough help that they're not worried about how they're going to take care of their kids or themselves, right? Then they can engage in, okay, who did this to me? Okay. So my strategic approach, so that's the symbolism I'm trying to say. We are telling we are being smothered by the algorithm because power doesn't want this story to come out. And that will persist. We can't circumvent the algorithm by talking about the same thing we're talking about, the $70 trillion secret, the $70 trillion facts. Now, it is our intent to hold those people to account. But in order to hold those people to account, we have to build a national mandate and put someone in power who can use the independent counsel position with the power of the Justice Department. That in that context would not be owned by the same people who robbed us, so that we could then use the facts to hold those people to account. But how do we get there? This is Roseanne's question. We get there by telling the American public how we can help them. Okay, the $70 trillion facts are prove what has happened to those people. So then instead of telling them first how it happened to you, let's tell them how we're going to help. Let's tell them how we are going to make a difference in their lives. That's okay. And that is the first aspect of the Clean New Deal that I think needs to be trumpeted, because it's the part that builds the national consensus. And that is, we need a new commitment, American commitment to rebuild the American middle class, to reinvest our extraordinary resources into our country, America. Everyone knows how much resource we invest everywhere else. Everywhere else. We got trillions and trillions and trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars. We got 800 bases around the globe. We got every war that you could fight. How many wars have we fought in since for the last 30, 35 years? I mean, you just go down the list. You know, I mean, it's a relentless, yeah. So we have trillions of dollars for everywhere else, but anything happening in America, you know, you got a natural disaster in Hawaii, you're giving people $700. Hello, right? Okay. So we're coming at it from a different perspective. No, America needs to recommit in investing in America. How about that? Right? I don't care if you're a Democrat, a Republican, MAGA, radical, socialist, whatever. If you're an American, you're going to get behind that because that's the very thing we haven't done. That's the very thing we have not done. So the first thing is, yeah, we're going to make a commitment in rebuilding the American middle class. We have done this before. That is what FDR did in the 30s. And historians will say in doing so, he saved capitalism. Well, capitalism is on fumes right now because it no longer works for 90% of the country. Right? It's working for the few, right? But okay, so we need to save it. If you believe in free markets, if you believe in democracy, it's time to save this right now, right? And so we're going to recommit to investing in building the American middle class. And so how? First order of business, we're changing this conversation of what a living wage is. We will stand behind a national jobs guarantee that bases the wages, minimum wages, are on area median income. Now, in the realm of statistics, there's lies, there are damn lies, and there's statistics. That's how bad statistics are. Okay, so I have to be careful and be very specific what I mean by median income, because most jobs, most people work just a 30 hours here, 20 hours there, this and that. No, there's a data point of median income that is full-time employment over the course of a full year, one employer. So when I say area median income, I'm talking about for individuals who work full-time for one employer, you know, and what is that median of that? Nationally, that amount is $60,000 a year. In Las Vegas, that amount is $58,000. Right. The lesser amounts are when you incorporate most people who are actually working multiple gig jobs, and the aggregate of what they make might be $35,000. Why? Because all those gig jobs pay shit. Right. That's a part of the problem of what's happened to America. But if you have one job working full time, right, and you look at the median income for those type of workers, you'll see a different story. That's what I'm talking about. So imagine a national jobs guarantee where wages start at the area median income for individuals working a full-time job for a whole year in your community. It's going to be different in San
wage. That's called the wage floor.
Yes.
A federal job guarantee, wherever it's at in your communities, sets the
Yes.
wage floor so that private industry has to meet or beat that to get you away.
That's right. So now we're changing the living wage from this nonsense about minimum wage that hasn't been changed in years, that no one can afford to live on, to the kind of income that we used to have, where the working class could own a home. Okay, that requires area median income. So national job guarantee. Now, what are we going to do with these people? What did Roosevelt do? There needs to be high value national projects that invest in America that could pay that kind of salary and above, because that's the minimum area median income. Well, There's a ton of stuff that we've deferred and haven't done, okay, that need to be done. I won't go down the whole list, but but we need a modern power grid in America. Period. We saw what happened in Texas when they had a snowstorm and the number of people who died because their power grid. Okay, we have a hodgepodge, nonsensical power grid for the richest country in the world. So now imagine, in light of climate change and all, which I hope we're past the point of denialism on that, okay, we need a national renewable energy power grid, okay, that would be able to allow Arizona to generate a boatload of solar energy. And when we figure out the technology, distribute it to Minnesota, okay, so that Minnesota doesn't try to use solar power when they get far less sun, but Arizona gets all the sun, and the coastal states can use offshore wind, and then they can generate all that energy, and then they can share it with Kansas, in West Texas, and that type of thing. We need a
And
national
geothermal and possibly nuclear.
right, okay.
But yes.
I don't want to get in the weeds, but the idea is a national renewable energy power grid is a multi-trillion-dollar endeavor that would pay the kind of salaries that the national guarantee would do. There is several things that we need to do that. Now, so on one side, so you have paying people enough where they can really live a life, right? Right? That's one thing. And then you have to have real national work for them to do, right? And then we need to end debt peonage in the United States. One of the things that has happened in the last 50 years is we are drowning ourselves in debt. Why? Because the same con artists who are stealing everything says, okay, as I'm paying you less and less and less, so that in order for you to stay in the same level of living, you have to borrow more and more and more. So therefore, right, you have the average household in America just drowning. Okay, no. We got to end the debt peonage, right? So this is the kind of investment we're talking about. National student loan debt forgiveness. Done.
Before you go into that one, can I ask you a couple of questions just real quick?
Yes.
Okay, first of all, you're on fire. I agree to everything you're saying. And one thing I want to remind some people of is that, Andrew Yang had this concept of UBI. I love what you're saying in context to that ridiculousness, because we don't need to plug people into more debt peonage. No, this is productive capacity. This is a national vision which does mirror exactly what the country did during the New Deal with infrastructure projects prior to World War II. And of course, you know what the next question is going to be from all of these naysayers out there who have no understanding of how we finance our debt, our government debt, is the nature of how are you going to pay for that? Oh my God, they don't see, this is to your point about where I continue to reveal people. We've already spent $70 trillion over the course of the last 13 years to a system of racketeering and theft, which is the mob, which is what we identified at the beginning. We're not gonna go into that. That's what I've done with what did you say, 460 plus truth bombs, right?
Yeah,
in the con. And so I've been doing it. But so far, I am completely engaged. I'm completely feeling you, because what the challenge that I've had in terms of trying to extrapolate that in my mind, right? And you just answered it, because the standard, how did you articulate it in terms of the
area median income?
That's what I was looking for.
Yeah.
That's the key. That's the immediate transition, because you're not going to have to deal with market fluctuations to answer that question. And you're not going to be, all of the middlemen who obviously will manipulate and lie and steal and cheat and deceit and theft and everything else in the vacuum of a plan. No, here is the standard. And then, just one other point that I want to make for those that are listening and getting enthusiastic about this, like I am, is that people, when you understand the mechanics of control fraud, you'll understand the appraisal fraud that goes into creating this outrageous asymmetry, but more importantly, this imbalance. And you all know this. Everybody who is not part of the top 5%, 1%, 0.001%, you look around, you've got 2 jobs, sometimes you've got 3 jobs, you and your spouse, same thing. And yet the cost of living in your real estate, if you're renting, you're in trouble. But if you own your real estate, you're kind of looking at it like, look, my house has increased in value X amount, so I can't go anywhere, because if I sell my house, I can't afford anything anywhere else, and yada, yada, yada. So to your point, I think you just came up with the perfect solution. And man, does that make reasonable sense given, but you have to have the national vision. So please continue along. You were going into the next phase, which is student debt.
Yeah. So again, just to remind everyone, okay, so we have a national jobs guarantee that sets minimum, that starts the wages, the floor of wages at your area median income for individual workers working full-time at one employer all year. You know, nationally, that's in 2022, that was $60,000 a year. But of course, it'd be more in New York and San Francisco and Chicago, and less, you know, in rural communities where the cost is less. Okay, that's the baseline, not minimum wage, area median income. We need to pay people right. The next thing is you have to have work. People want honest work, high value work that would justify that and more. That's why you have to have national programs for stuff that we actually need to get done. That's how we have the interstate highway system back in the 50s. Okay, well, we need this type of stuff done today. I pointed out just one idea is that national renewable energy power grid, which we need. Okay, another idea would be a national renewable energy high-speed rail, right? The United States is one of the largest countries of geography in the world, and we don't have high-speed rail when several countries who have less money than we do have it. So we need it. Of course, trillions of dollars, high value job. It will have a massive impact on the economy. Okay, so then the second thing is the end debt peonage, right? We have been paid less and less and less and less over 50 years. And in order to just keep our noses in the same place above the water, we've had to borrow more and more and more. Okay, we need national student loan debt forgiveness, because guess what? Tuition inflation exceeds medical inflation, which exceeds normal inflation. Those are the worst aspects of inflation. So what we've done to these younger generations is they start out just getting their education with as much debt as we used to get buying our home. Right? They start that out before their career starts. No, national student loan debt forgiveness. We also need national medical debt forgiveness. You got medical expenses, people going bankrupt. We're the only country in the world where people go bankrupt because they got sick. No, debt forgiveness, right? We need to eliminate those debts right there, right? And establish every 10 years a debt jubilee. The idea, it used to be, this has historical, back in medieval times, relevance, right? The idea that every so often you forgive the unsecured, particularly the unsecured debt and stuff like that. It changes the way people will lend money. It changes the way people perceive that, and it allows people to reset. Okay, I don't want to get too far in the weeds. That is ending debt peonage in the country. Answering the question of how we pay for it. Yes, the secret that Dick Cheney was referring to when he said that deficits don't matter is modern monetary theory. If you ever wanted to know how exactly do we pay for every war that we possibly can, that we just pour billions and billions and billions of dollars in Afghanistan and in Israel and in Ukraine and everywhere we send money to, but America, right, is because because of modern monetary theory. Don't want to get into the weeds as to how that is, but we're in the unique position where we can print as much money as we want, and it doesn't necessarily create inflation. Okay, so that is a source. The problem is but the people who've been robbing us have used that source so much that they've actually put it at risk. And we can't just go to that well, because they have done things to put that way of generating money at risk, right? So we don't want to get into the weeds. We have to claw this money back. Okay, the Rand Corporation, well recognized, did a study, published a study that shows that had the distribution of wages that was used in the United States from 1945 to 1974, if the same distribution of wages that allowed the working class to own their own home, right, and send their kids to college, right? Okay, if that same distribution of wages were used till today, right, we would be in an entirely different situation. For the entire period of time, from 1975 to today, you could pay everyone in the bottom 90% of the country, everyone, $1,144 a month for every month since 1975. That's how much we've been robbed. Give you some idea. Okay, that total is $50 trillion. Okay, but where did that money go? There is a reason why the billionaire class is so much bigger, so much wealthier than any billionaire class, than any class of wealth ever. Right? Right? Like, and Elon Musk has more money in real dollars, adjusted for inflation, than the entire Gilded Age by himself. Okay, that's okay. We have to get some of that money back, right? Okay, and so you have to restore progressive taxes like we had it pre-Reagan. Reagan started the trend of reducing the tax rates to where people who had more actually pay less than people who have less. That's what we have now. That wasn't the case before Reagan. Before Reagan, the top tax rate was like 90%, right? Exactly. And guess what? Wealthy people were doing damn good. Just don't get it twisted. They were doing fantastic. It's just that they weren't as ridiculously, gluttonously, rich. I mean, so much money, they don't even know what to do with the money. So much money that you got billionaires today. Wasn't it ridiculous back in 2020 that we had 3 billionaires who self-funded space missions that we had done 60 years in the past, right? But they have enough money that they could, yeah, that's the kind of stuff. And to have, Bezos thanking the Amazon workers who paid for it, who are peeing in a cup, and he's graciously paying them $15 an hour. What the fuck? Okay, we need to get some of that money back.
Yeah,
and we get it through.
This is brilliant. Can I please insert a couple of thoughts here to have you kind of riff on this as well? Okay, because I really like this fusion of where you're at, because it cuts to the chase without getting into certain sort of political ideology and constructs could take us, like when you say get into the weeds. But look, the tax policy is the other side of the coin of what we continue to reveal with all of the facts that lead us to this revelation of 70 trillion, not 50 trillion. And it's a different methodology of what you're talking about. You're talking about the extraction of real terms, not to mention what happened in GDP, but of the working class based on the numbers, when you correlate them over the course of time that go up. But beyond that, just a couple of quick items. Look, I think everybody is aware that during COVID, the entire global economy came to a screeching halt. And then the billionaires got infinitely richer. I think, to your point, some lines. Yeah, I think that Elon Musk's net worth, maybe doubled or tripled at some point. I think it had tripled at some point, then it came back down slightly. But still, to your point, it's like beyond the pharaohs, right? I mean, we're talking beyond the pharaohs. Not to mention he's his own self-government. It was ironic to hear Putin say, yeah, Elon Musk is going to do whatever Elon Musk wants. His influence was nobody can touch Elon Musk, right? Not to mention what has Elon Musk done? He bought a platform for propaganda, really. So, the idea, and people need to understand this, that we heard Mitt Romney in the past and all of these other things where it's like, look, corporations are people, right? And that's a whole nother thing as it relates to Citizens United, and that's the corruption of the revolving door. But in terms of tax policy, what people need to understand in terms of banking is that look, after the great financial crisis and after the global economy came to a halt because of COVID, what the financial system does is it looks for safe assets. It looks for safe harbor. It looks for those that it can lend money against. And so the way we created the tax code, where people like Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos can basically take their income in the form of loans from banks because of the categorization of taxation, where they're getting a lower rate of taxes based on borrowing against their assets that get hyperinflated. And oh yeah, incidentally, all of the control fraud mechanics that we've been revealing to you over and over and over through our work at www.thecon.tv that the mainstream media refuses to go to Kevin's point about censoring and smothering the truth because they all get paid from it. But it's the taxation, to your point, the progressive taxation too, because I want to remind people that during the Eisenhower administration, following World War II, that the highest tax rates were like 90%. And yes, the richest did very well. Why? Because they were incentivized to, if they didn't put money into ROI, they were forced to recalibrate and put their money into growth for the middle class. That created the growth of the middle. It was the productive capacity of those that were, let's say, people at the head of the industrialization of the United States. But that was part and parcel to the mechanics of tax policy, where the rich, the ultra rich, the guys who are in charge of the system, if they didn't reinvest in the country, then they were taxed at 90%. And so they were incentivized to do what we're saying the country has to do right now. So I hope I made the point. But anyway, I thought that's extremely important, because the greatest growth of the middle class we ever had was during that time period.
Yeah, absolutely, Patrick. No, I appreciate you putting a bow on that, putting a light on that. The idea that people need to understand without, right, at the highest level, we're going to pay for the Clean New Deal by clawing back through our tax code. One of the ways, right? The people who got the money, the excess money that was taken from us and
That's right.
given to people who and then they were taxed at a much lower rate, right? Okay, so that's the whole thing, right? Another thing and another aspect that's important for you
Hold
to
on,
notice.
Roseanne, you keep trying to get your
I just want to say real quick, instead of saying stop printing the money, what you say with taxation of the rich is you take the money out of the economy. What do taxes do? They take money from the economy. It goes, and what does it do to the debt? It lowers the debt. So don't say, the way we should phrase it is not about printing money. We're looking for incentivization of the rich. You incentivize them, you tax them up the butt unless and until they invest. But you're just taking
the real economy. In the real, that was my point too. And sorry to interrupt, but I just got to make this point because I definitely, you're right. Okay, and this is the whole structure. But again, to reanimate what I've learned from MMT, and I believe this is exactly right. We don't finance the federal government with our taxes. Okay, we don't need the rich to finance our government in this big spend that you're talking about. That's going to create productive economy, the real economy, productive capacity, which is going to improve the economy and pay down the debt. But you have to control the rich, the ultra rich, the uber rich, the top 100% rich, because if you don't, just like what we learned in trust busting, was that they control the country. And nobody in the United States had a revolution in 1776 to 1783 to say, hey, let's give our entire country to a South African apartheid guy that's going to extract all the wealth of the United States and pay it to himself and his brethren that want to have an apartheid state in the United States, if that's one, ideological construct, or Jeff Bezos and everything else. The point being that we have to have the government of, by, and for the people in control. It's not of, by, and for the corruption. That's what we're in the midst of, and that's what we're trying to break the grip of. But anyway, I think that's an extremely important point, because again, people get so confused when they start thinking about the federal budget and the federal deficit and how we fund and finance, to your point, wars, and it just gets so confusing and overwhelming, and it's just the antithesis of the household. The government isn't a household. The government is going to be a lot longer unless we implode on ourselves and have a revolution, and then all of a sudden there's no value for the dollar, which we could discuss downstream. But to this point, if the government doesn't get control of the billionaires, the big trick here is the billionaires are in control of the government. And like I say all the time, billionaires spend billions to loot trillions because of the situation that we've created for the past 15 years. So I hope that further bridges and animates, and also, I think, justifies what you're talking about for people going, these people are nuts. You can't do this. Of course we can. It's how we do it.
Well, we can do it, and we will do it. The important thing that people need to understand is, so we talked about recalibrating the wages to area median income. We talked about having real, honest work to do that would justify that level of income. We talked about ending debt peonage, right? So that, again, right. And now we're talking about how we're paying for it. Yes, it's going to be done through the tax code. It's going to be done through MMT, absolutely, right? Though all I'm cautioning is that MMT just can't be the way by itself, because they have burned that bridge pretty severely. So there are limits there. And the last piece is, we have the power to stop the gouging. So the people who've been robbing us, every time we get a couple of dollars in our pocket, they just raise the prices. Let's understand what happened in inflation in 2022, 2023, right? 2/3, the economists will tell you. Grab one, put them in a headlock, ask them. 2/3 of the price increases was price gouging, was suppliers of goods and services understanding that Americans had a couple of extra dollars in their pocket, and they changed the pricing of eggs, of food, of all the things you need in order to squeeze the excess dollars you had out of your pocket. Did a great job. Okay, we have the power to impose excise private. What is it called? It's called we have a way of taxing profits over a certain limit. We have a way of controlling pricing, of controlling the limits by which they can get a return on their investment. I know we've been convinced that this is communism and shit like that. Let us understand, it was the Nixon administration that last imposed price controls in the United States. So yes, in a context where the people who are selling you everything you need will increase their prices over and above their costs just because now you're getting area immediate income, we can stop them by having excise profit taxes. We could stop them by having price controls, allowing them to get an absolutely market return on an investment, just not gouge you, right? Okay. And that's exactly what we're going to do, because we're recalibrating the fact that you can afford to have an American standard of living, unlike what we've been doing these last 30 years. Okay, so that's the program. And my recommendation is, this is what needs to be our focus. This is what will galvanize people. I don't care if you are a middle class, working class, conservative, liberal, progressive, green, libertarian, right? You will not, given what you've gone through, you can get on board to this. This is just restoring the America that we had at its best, right? Okay. And when you get the army, the legion of Americans who've been squeezed to the point where they're killing themselves, deaths of despair, right? To gather together and say, you know what? This is still a democratic republic. We can actually still vote, no matter how much money they spend. We can go into the voting booth and vote for who we want to, right? Okay. And so if they want my vote, they better be on board to the Clean New Deal. And guess what? I did some checking. There are multiple candidates in that slot who would sign up for the Clean New Deal, including the most popular of the independents, RFK Jr., right? We could get RFK Jr. to advocate, or whoever the American public prefers outside of Biden and Trump, right? For the Clean New Deal, because who would be opposed to reinvesting in rebuilding America, right? Okay. And so that's what this is all about. And so this needs to be the point of our conversation, because if once we gather the Legion, once we have the 80 million people standing behind the candidate of our choice, right, who's committed to enacting the Clean New Deal, and that person takes oath of office October 20th next year. I mean, excuse me, January 20th of next year, right? Oh my, that person can then enact what we said that they were going to do, because the Congress is going to, we just elected independent. These people have woken up, right? Whatever Republicans and Democrats are left in the Congress, because, by the way, we'll be voting for people down ticket who support the Clean New Deal, right? They are knowing that they're next if they don't get on board with the Clean New Deal, right? And we will be marching on Washington to make sure, this doesn't end with who we elect. But the fact is then that president can say, okay, but now let's take a look at who robbed us in the first place. And we can appoint an independent counsel, right, to investigate and have a federal standing grand jury to interrogate persons of interest who were engaged in robbing the American people engage in criminal activity, provable criminal activity. That is the moment when the investigations will start producing the names that will shock anyone listening to this, because it's all the names all the names you trusted. If it's like if I'm just a confession. I grew up Catholic in New York, right? Okay, how you think the parishioners feel to find out the Catholic priests are doing what they're doing? Okay, this is what we are going to experience when our independent counsel investigates the facts of what these people have done to us. The people we trusted the most have bent us over the couch. Yes, over and over again. Yes, and guess what? Watch the perp walks. Watch the perp walks then, right? And that is when we will have justice. But in the meantime, we got to keep the lights on. We got to get to work. So this is my strategy. Tell the people how we're going to help them first. Elect someone on that basis. Then turn around, help the people, and then turn our attention towards who put us in this situation in the first place. We do it that way, we can get this whole thing done.
Look, I am so impressed with the way you laid that out. I love the mechanics. I am in agreement and alignment and solidarity, comrade, in everything that we've talked about to turn this thing inside out, upside down, because of everything that you've laid out brilliantly. I want to just provide some of my sort of experience, my interpretation of some of the things that you've laid out, and where I come down on this, and how, while I agree with everything that you're saying, I think there also has to be a two-pincer strategy. Because again, what we're talking about here is building the airplane as we're flying at the same time, to try to galvanize somewhere in the vicinity of 120 million Americans to understand the facts, to get the nourishment of the soul, to understand what it is that we're trying to achieve as a group of American citizenry that's really taking the sum total of our lives, our education, our experience, and where we are in this whole situation, because nobody else has been able to do it. And what are we trying to do? The ultimate objective is just simply to create a country of, by, and for the people. But the key to that, and the key to everything, which the founders knew and everybody else understood, is the only way you do that is to hold power to account. which means you have to have the integrity of law, which is what the entirety of the con and the entirety of the new Untouchables, the entirety of the Patrick Level Truth Bombs, the con is illustrating. And to your point about how they've smothered me, right, in the algorithm, I got to point this out to you, something that occurred to me last night that I hadn't known, but it's another one of those kind of like thumbprints of the whodunit of how this whole thing works. Because when you're getting played, right, and this has been my entire experience, right, when the entire economy blew up and I was like standing there looking down the barrel of the servicers doing a song and dance on me where I couldn't really ever get a straight answer about what was going on while, there was a transition between, the President Bush and everything that was happening behind the scenes with the Treasury Secretary and the Federal Reserve and everything else in the midst of media. And then, of course, this new incredibly charismatic president who said all the right things, but yet eventually I learned did all the wrong things, right? And so when I started to go down this path, I had to reconfigure and I had to recontextualize my mind, where I literally had to turn my entire understanding of our society inside out. Let me tell you, that's not an easy situation to do at 40 years old, when you thought you freaking knew everything, to be honest with you. Okay. But see, that's what crisis and desperation does to a person. Like I've said in other truth bombs, man, I was up on the top of a cliff ready to throw myself off it because nothing made sense. But I made a promise to myself that I was going to figure out what the hell actually happened. And I did. And now we have. And now all of the people that are connected to us have. And we have the evidence. Now, to your point, it seems to me like, and I love the strategy, right? Because Americans are experiencing what Americans are experiencing. And at the moment, it's chaos, because the chaos is media. The chaos is propaganda. The chaos is playing roulette with everything that we're supposed to be and are, because of lies and deception from everybody. We're talking about from anybody who represents what I call the new robber barons, which the MAGAs would call deep state, which all of the institutions have failed completely. And those who aren't, for example, far-right extremists, lunatics that want to create some sort of fascistic sort of scenario, which we know, and I got to say for the record, and I say this all the time in my truth bombs, I know a ton of MAGAs. I have MAGAs in my family, and they're not all completely horrific people, not even close. They're actually really good people for the most part. They're confused. They don't understand how the system works. And why wouldn't you be? Because of everything that I've already experienced, right? The liars' loans, the liars in the attorneys and the judiciary, and the financial fraudsters and hucksters that have created this insane perversion of everything we think we are. Which, by the way, to all of everybody who still thinks we're fighting to save democracy, we're not. We're not a democracy, and fighting to save free markets. We're not free markets. What we're telling you is this is simply to not, to paraphrase Kevin earlier. I don't want to get in the weeds, right? But I'm just going to say what it is. It's simply tyranny. It's simply the same sort of scenario that we rebelled against to create the United States. And you might think to yourself, Patrick, what are you talking about? That's insane. That's crazy talk. Yeah, it is. Of course it is. But I went the distance and I spent millions of dollars because I was able to do it as a producer and because I'm a citizen who actually cares about the integrity of the law, i.e., I want the ship to float. I want the plane to soar. I want to live in that country of the grand American achievement, which I grew up with, landing a man on the moon, defeating fascism, overcoming, slavery and all the rest of it, even though it's always been flawed. And the second you say anything that comes out of your mouth, if anything positive, yeah, in your mind, 10 things could come out, it's like but it's like, we got to break that grip, right? It's like, guys, nothing will ever be perfect, but it has to be a whole lot better than it is, which we're revealing to you. And to the algorithm point, last night, I realized, because as Roseanne had prefaced earlier in this conversation, we've done some amazing work, right? By any metrics and analytics, people would think, especially if they were in a marketing agency, they'd look at our stuff and they'd be like, wow, this is pretty impressive. And they'd probably be scratching their heads too, is how hasn't the message gotten through? When you consider 7.5 million views on TikTok, that's a lot. I mean, I remember when everybody was talking about Marianne Williamson's TikTok stuff, and it was in the same category, and everybody was listening to Marianne Williamson, but the country certainly wasn't talking about what Patrick Lovell was revealing in my truth bombs on TikTok. Why? Because of the algorithm. That's what you're talking about. It is literally the Borg that cannot let the information out that we've aggregated. And on TikTok last night, just to put a feather in this cap. So I kept scratching my head the whole time because I was looking around Twitter, and I realized that in many of my comments on other threads, I would have unbelievable viewership. Like, for example, last one, I happened to comment on a Lawrence Tribe comment, and I made, excuse me, uh, tweet, and then I made a comment on the thread, and then suddenly I've got 30,000 views. Okay, this happens to me all the time. Okay, but I don't have 30,000 views on my truth bomb laying all of these things out. And you're like, okay. And I've observed that now for months and months and months. And then I also had this corollary because I know it frustrates you, Kevin. But at the same time, it's my raison d'etre. This is who I am. I've always been a brawler. I always go after people that I think are full of shit, and I'm not afraid to fight the bully. That's just who I am. That's who I've always been. And I know you're like that too, and I know Roseanne is too, and that's what brings us together, right? You guys are just slightly smarter than I am. I just continue to do the same thing, right? Because what do? I go after Tucker Carlson. I go after Russell Brand. I go after Vivek Ramaswamy. I go after Jimmy Dore. I go after others, okay? And I do that just to call out things that I know that are details. And what I realized that the more I did that, the more I felt, quite frankly, that I was being censored, which is obviously really funny and ironic, right? Because I was really a huge fan, well, for the last 13 years until X revealed a lot of things I never anticipated about Elon Musk. I loved Elon Musk. I thought he was like one of the saviors of our time period, kind of like, Barack Obama, to be honest with you. And then suddenly things started changing and I started seeing it, and then all of this weird stuff based on the people that I'm talking about. And the more I became critical of these things that they were saying and what they were doing, I noticed that at least it seemed to me that I was throttled down. And then suddenly I started paying attention to Matt Taibbi and, well, started paying attention to Matt Taibbi. I've been paying attention closely to Matt Taibbi for 13 years. In fact, I consider him one of the greatest journalists of our age. And he was the one who actually inspired me to become who I was within the context of the con and everything that we're revealing. But at the same time, Matt Taibbi changed. But one thing Matt Taibbi has been doing recently is that he's been revealing a lot of the semantics of what he learned during what he'd call the Twitter files, because he was working within Elon Musk, and he started to reveal some of the techniques that Elon was using that before him Jack Dorsey was using, and how they work within the algorithms to either amplify or suppress, what they call throttle down, right? And he was showing case, and then he was being slightly critical of Elon, not in a full-on Matt Taibbi way because of the nature of this weirdness that they're all in the midst of at the moment. But when I started to think about that, I was like, oh my God, I'm just simply being throttled down because of the algorithm. And this is what I had noticed on Facebook before. This is what I had noticed. Instagram's not the right place because I think beautiful people that are action sports athletes. I was surprised that TikTok could be so effective, but this isn't an analysis of social media so much as the algorithm is real, okay, to your point. And then suddenly, I just, for the first time last night, clicked on Grok. Now, have you guys ever clicked on Grok?
No. No.
So it's an AI that interprets basically the sum total of your tweets. And you know what it did? I should read it to you verbatim, but I'll just for kind of keeping it short. It basically said, because I'm relentless in attacking Vivek Ramaswamy and Elon Musk and Tucker Carlson, that I'm a self-righteous, it tried to make fun of me in a way. It was trying to use, shall we say, oh, I know. He was like he lives on the land of misfit toys. It was trying to use ridicule to, basically to somebody who's just, who's trying to get a composite of who Patrick Lovell is. It tried to diminish my credibility, right? Because of why? Because, and it says right there, because you're critical of Vivek Ramaswamy and Tucker Carlson and Elon Musk. What have I been saying, especially recently? And I'll close this point out, and I did this with Elon Musk yesterday. I observed, and I'm no fan of what Letitia James is saying. Letitia James, who just brought the settlement against Donald Trump, is, in the spotlight, and good job with, the stuff with Trump that should have happened 3 decades ago at least, right? But she's like, okay, here is a victory for the law, that no man is above the law, that markets have been recalibrated, and that, this proves that everything works in blah, 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 right? And it's this self-grandiosing, and it's like, we actually, we got rid of the dragon sort of thing, right? Which a lot of people want to hear, especially in the blue, no matter who. And, I'm going to vote for Biden because Biden's not Trump and it's a threat to democracy and yada, yada, yada. Meanwhile, what do we know? We know that Trump is a mid-level player at best. This is no savior of free markets. Trump is not Wall Street. He's not even remotely close. And yet he does personify a lot of what Wall Street has gotten away with, right? So even though that's my perspective on and this is all third rail stuff that you're referring that you want me to get away with so that we can focus on the agenda and the objectives. But I just want to use this as a case in point in terms of the algorithms, right? So I happen to mention, and I do think this is another part of it, because the platform, and this goes to your point about billionaires, when billionaires have so much money, right? They can, in this day and age, in which they have, Jeff Bezos bought the Washington Post, the family that owns the New York Times is a billionaire apparatus that's hid all the stuff that we reveal on the con. And I know that because I worked with guys at the New York Times. So the credibility is high as it gets. And then, the likes of Elon Musk can buy, a platform like Twitter. And what I've observed, not only do they throttle me down, and you might want to consider me an anti-fascist. Anybody who's anti-fascist or critical of Donald Trump or critical of corruption or critical of anything Fox, they throttle down. And I've observed it in real time. And they amplify everybody who is in that space. Like you said, if you're Alex Jones and you say the most ridiculous stuff, you're getting tens of millions of views, right?
David Icke. I mean, my God, man.
All
David
of these
Icke.
guys. Right, exactly. And so here we are, and your point is well taken, because what I'm telling you is, here's an example. Oh, and I want to finish the thought on Letitia James and also some others. But I have seen, as of yesterday, a whirlwind of threats by MAGAs that are like, we're going to create, they're threatening assassinating Letitia James. They're threatening assassinating all sorts of AGs and DOJ, anybody who's a threat to Donald Trump. We've got our AK-15s. We're ready to be deployed, boss. Just say when. I'm seeing that everywhere. So I happened to just say that on Twitter yesterday, X. I said, hey, Elon, because by the way, I have been thrown into X jail by pointing some of this stuff out in the past. Meanwhile, they allow all of these sentiments to run amok. So you can see who they're amplifying and who they're throttling down, right? And so I happened to bring this up yesterday. And by the way, the first like, I didn't get a lot of likes on it, but the first like I got was former director of the DOJ's white collar fraud division, a guy by the name of Paul Pelletier, who spent 30 years in this position. So if it's good enough for him, and credible enough for him to give me, dude, you nailed this. Because what I said was, hey, Elon, you might be next, because I guarantee you the Constitution doesn't say this is okay. And neither does a government working out by and for the people that's going to throttle down any sorts of threats. And the biggest threat of all that I continue to reveal to everybody, all of this stuff is a reaction to what we're revealing to you. What we're living in is an era of financial terrorism. And for those of you who were American patriots and you think, okay, you got to take out the bad guys. Yeah, okay. Then how do you fight terrorism? Well, what you do is you take away their ability to have the capacity for advancing terrorism. You take away their productive capacity. What does the law do to financial terrorism based on everything we're talking about? It holds them accountable. And it basically, justice is to, A, prove their fraud in a court of law, and then B, take back all of their ill-gotten gains, and three, throw them in jail and basically, hopefully, send them into poverty where they sent tens of millions of people. That would be justice, using the integrity of law of by and for the people. So to finish the concept, yeah, you're absolutely right. There are algorithms that are censoring the truth. Everything is a lie. This is all Orwellian, and it's billionaires that are the problem. Billionaires and the elites that have hijacked our government, that spend billions to loot trillions because of what we're revealing. That's the $70 trillion gateway that ultimately, when you guys understand that what Kevin is saying isn't class warfare, it isn't it isn't what do they always when they want to when they want to delegitimize socialists, right? They're like they want to rob from the successful and give it to the
Oh, you mean like Robin Hood or?
yeah, it's just it's a deception racket. It's a distortion, right? It's everything is perverse. It's lie, deny, switch the blame, and implicate. It's all of these crazy psychological defects of those that are sociopaths and that are trying to completely control the system. They only get away with that if the integrity of law doesn't hold power to account. We all know absolute power corrupts absolutely. That when a group of men discover plunder, they create a legal code to authorize it and a moral code to glorify it. All of these things. So you're absolutely right. We're not crazy. We're not thinking in kind of like what are the guys and this was the focus of our truth bomb the other day when the mainstream says MAGA's gone crazy and so they get into conspiracy theories so they're delegitimate. Meanwhile, it's conspiracy that's creating all of these things that we're talking about. So to your point, look, I've tried for 2 years to get the attention of the tens of millions of people who got played, who got rug pulled, who got deceived, and who got destroyed, to get them to understand what happened to them so that they could join us to create a mass movement, a populist crusade to purge corruption. And I like to throw in the caveat because I'm anti-fascist, drown the fascism that it fuels. Okay, that's where I'm coming from. We can all be slightly different in terms of how we see our priorities and everything else. But I wanted to just go off on that riff because it legitimizes everything you're talking about. Because no matter how hard Roseanne and I try, no matter how we've gotten this to there's still not either one getting the message because of the algorithm. And if they do, it sounds like another language, like Roseanne said at the beginning, that they can't decipher it because it's not everything that mainstream media and the reactionary full circus is telling them that it's all about Donald Trump that has all the oxygen in the room. What we're talking about, guys, is really 7 decades of what's led us to this point, and it's no longer useful. Uh, Useful. It's destroying us. And so, my final point, and I'll try to bring it to a close on this conclusion. I agree with you that we have to do this, but my only consideration within all of that is my only fear is that if you start swinging with the jobs guarantee, right, without the complete understanding that we have been looted to the tune of 70 trillion, that is putting trillions in the pockets of the criminals, that's been my biggest criticism of MMT, because MMT has told us from day one what's possible. And what you have to learn in that process is the difference between monetary policy and fiscal policy. That's a big difference. But quantitative easing brings them together for all of you MMTers that are watching this and going, yeah, but it's no, come on, guys. Anybody who doesn't understand what quantitative easing did doesn't understand where monetary policy blends into, fiscal policy. But the long and the short of it is that without a recognizing, exposing, and making the fraud central to the entire platform, then people are going to run into that thing that we grew up with, which is class warfare. And those that can't make it have got to steal from those who did. That's the technique and the psychology that we got to go up. So can you address that?
Yeah, Patrick, I totally hear what you're saying. And the thing is, and first and foremost, again, this is a strategic discussion. How can we move? How can we do as Roseanne, and in the end of her comment, do is how can we get the message across to millions and millions of people? There's something blocking us. Okay, you have said, and accurately so, affirming, right, that your message is being throttled. It is more, I mean, at a level of severity that is you can't find another example of because you can find all types of people who get thousands, hundreds of thousands of followers, and oh, okay, so we understand you're being throttled, and you have experienced where you don't talk about the $70 trillion facts, right? And all of a sudden you go viral, right, okay, right, okay. So that's the reality of the situation. When you couple that reality of the situation with the fact that we're not going to hold power to account, just by talking about it. I mean, it'd be one thing if that would hold them to account. The only way we're going to hold them to account, we can't hold them to account by going into federal court right now. People are trying. We can't hold them to account by going into state court right now. People are trying, and they're getting crushed, even though the law stands on their side. Why? Because they own the court. The only way we can access this is at the
That's
top
so
of the
critical
system.
to understand. You're absolutely
Yeah,
right.
right.
And for anybody who wants to doubt that, you already know it with the Supreme Court. So just just think about what you can't see. Go ahead.
Okay. So Patrick, all I'm saying here is as a matter of strategy, right? If we know they're not going to let your message get out to the millions of people, if we know that we're not going to be able to hold them to account unless we come at it from the perspective of the independent counsel, right? That's the level we have to be at to force the courts to apply the law equally, right? Okay, right. Then it behooves us to focus our message on what will not get throttled. Now, your counter in terms of class warfare, oh, I want to have that conversation. So did Bernie, right? The class warfare has occurred over the last 50 years. You want class warfare? You want class warfare?
I agree, but you got to be able to give them the facts of the fraud. That's the
point. No, you do not. No, you do not. All you have to do is show them the results of it. Okay. The results of it is how.
True. That's true too.
Yeah, that's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
The results of it is to show them how people's lives have been made harder and harder and harder, and how you pay more and more in taxes, and the wealthiest of the wealthy, pay less and less and less. How they have been allowed to offshore trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars and stuff like that. Well, we're sitting here working 3 jobs and stuff like that, and living on someone's couch.
What's the Federal Reserve? What's the Federal Reserve do?
No, we don't have to get it. It's too much complexity.
Just let me say it.
It's too much complexity.
No, but
we don't have to get into that.
This is so simple. Please, let me make this one point. Please.
Oh my God,
please,
man.
Please. The Federal Reserve's mandate is to have full employment and low inflation. The Federal Reserve's reality is that it increased the assets of the rich through real estate manipulation and stock manipulation. That's all you need to know. So the bottom line is the central bank does not work for a government of by and for the people. That's crystal clear. Please continue. But without that knowledge, you don't understand.
I keep on telling you, people don't need to know that. I'm just saying.
Please continue.
No. That does explain how this is happening.
Right.
Right. Okay. The problem is they are in a position. The other thing that I'm trying to convey to you, outside of you getting throttled, outside of your message.
I agree with all of it, but I just think you got another point.
The other side of the fence is the 80 million people that you're trying to talk to. Yeah. Right. Are so stressed.
Right.
They have seen in their own lives that they are a banana peel away from carrying a sign.
Yeah.
And they've seen it with other people who that's how bad it is out there. Okay. So that person simply does not have the bandwidth. It's a bad joke told slowly. Does not have the bandwidth to learn. Oh, let me give. Here's 5 hours to help you understand how they screwed you. How they fucked you, right? No, they don't have the bandwidth for that. What they have the bandwidth for is, how are you going to help me? Or otherwise, I got to keep on scuffling the way I'm doing. And the thing is,
there's a lot of truth to that.
Patrick, look at your own situation. I ain't going to say anything and try to expose. I'm asking you to think about how you were able to put this information together. Because I can tell you this much, you would not have been able to put this information together if you could not keep your lights on.
That's right.
Okay, so
it was my job. It was my job. Exactly.
No, but my saying is that remember the ability to be able to figure out how is a function of your ability to at least sustain. You had family to help you, right? Okay, I mean, right? These
but
people,
I had a producer that I got because of.
No. I'm not talking about how you did the work. I'm talking about you as an individual, whether you had the bandwidth to actually to do the 13. Right. If you don't know how you're going to eat, if you don't know how you're going to where you're going to sleep, right? I'm sorry, you don't have the capacity, and this is too many people is in that space. So this is so. What I'm saying is, we need to tell them how the Clean New Deal is going to help them, how it's going to change their lives, how this is not incremental change. This is fundamental change, right? Right. And that they can get behind it, no matter what their political ideology is, because all of them are in the same spot, right? That is so important. Now, imagine if a Patrick Lovell was talking about that. You talk about going viral. This is what we need, right?
Well, I want to try it. I got to wrap my head around how I present it and then work with you in practice and all the other stuff. But yeah,
because what all I'm saying here is that when you couple that to the reality that talking about the third rail
yeah,
is not the thing that's going to hold them accountable. The thing that's going to hold them accountable is when the independent counsel is investigating.
so true.
You know, yeah, okay. So therefore, if you see them throttling you, but you know, stopping you from communicating to the masses because you're talking about the one thing the algorithm won't let you talk about,
Yeah.
right? You're not, it's not a matter of losing your integrity to say,
Agreed.
oh, okay, I got you.
You're
Say,
being like
okay,
water, dude. You got to do like what Roseanne said at the beginning. You're going to go under, you're going to go above, you're going to go around, and there's no
yes,
magic words. But yet, you know what?
but you're not sacrificing the priority. You're not
Yeah,
sacrificing the priority.
I
I
agree.
understand how you
I hear
feel.
you, dude.
There's
I hear you.
nothing.
I agree,
Okay,
man.
right. Okay, because we will get this done. It's in the Clean New Deal that we're going to appoint an independent counsel.
That's right.
But we don't have to name names and lay out the facts. That's the stuff they don't want to get out. But it's going to be too late if we got our legion together and we have our president together and we got we got
true.
Congress by the short and curlies and we're getting the Clean New Deal executed.
Amen. Amen. So look, let's for the people out there. First of all, I think Kevin made an absolute fantastic, um, you know, vision, objective, the way we got to do it. And I think he's absolutely right, given the facts of what we've all considered. And Roseanne, of course, being the heart and soul and the glue that keeps this whole thing together. This is exactly what Roseanne has been saying the entire time.
Yes.
You know, I want to remind everybody, this is what's so important for people to understand. Look, there was a time when we came out of the Civil War, right? Where before that, you know, slavery is slavery. And it had, what I learned recently was the sophistication of the financialization of human capital and labor was all embedded in slavery, which was incredible to me when I learned about all of the derivatives and the credit default swaps all came from that era, which we call financial innovation based on slavery. Okay, now you get into, you know, where we are now, and it's the same thing. It's just hidden. That's the thing, because of this debt peonage of what you're talking about. Once it gets you trapped in there, you got to stay on the gerbil wheel and you got to keep that thing flowing. Otherwise, and you're feeding from the crack tube like everybody else, and that's not what we need to have a sustainability of family and all of those things that make us this powerful country, right? And there was another point in there that I think I want. God, sometimes there's so many of these important things that you say, and all of us that we know. Oh, this is where I wanted to go with it. So the impossibility in what I've always hashtagged as failure is not an option, right? Is the notion that, and that came from my namesake, James Lovell, and the brilliance of the NASA team that was able to reconfigure the capsule that had blown out its oxygen to be able to get the right telemetry that was a 1 in a billion shot. And they pulled it off just because they were smart under pressure and they could figure it out. The same thing happened to the American people post Civil War. And when we got into the robber barons and we started to move into this thing where it was like, hey, wait a second. The farmers in the Midwest were like, we're getting hosed by the robber barons. And then there was a labor movement. And then there was a environmental movement. Then there was a women's suffrage movement. And then there was, in order to form a more perfect union, which created this, that ultimately led to the trust busting, and it carried itself through the New Deal, because it wasn't Roosevelt who just created all of these thoughts in his head that were like, we're going to do this. No, this came from all different places in the United States, all different political ideologies, all different. The farmers' revolution, quite frankly, was like, we're the ones who are the producers and we're getting raped and we're not going to allow it anymore. And they created these, you know, these movements, which ultimately at that point became the labor rights movement, right? And by the way, there were a lot of communists at that time and socialists at that time that were, you know, deeply embedded in the labor rights movement, and they were the ones who fought back. So there's this tradition in the United States, right? For every problem, there's a solution, and for every injustice, there are people willing to fight for justice. It's an American trait. And it's what we have to do compositely, collectively, to be able to break the iron grip of bondage. And like what I always say is that I'm not the Messiah, right? The truth is the Messiah. The truth is the Savior. What we're saying, but there's tactics to get here, but I'm all to get there, that we have to get everybody there. But I'm also saying that truth plus justice equals the American way. I mean, that's what it's always been. And so we, as a time period of the American historical perspective and experience, if we are going to continue this experiment that started with Thomas Jefferson and the founding fathers and all of the things that they had to deal with, that we can be very critical and hyper critical of the flaws and yada yada through the whole process, guys, nobody's going to wave a magic wand to make this thing work. Nobody's going to snap their fingers and it's going to, like on your phone, and you're going to find a solution. What's going to happen is millions upon millions upon millions of us gathering and creating the critical mass necessary to fight for a country of, by, and for the people. So that's enough of my platitudes. But I agree with you, Kevin, that I'm going to experiment myself. And we know that it's not about me, it's about us, but it's about the information that I have. Eventually, that plays a huge role into this. But we are definitely going to reconfigure, trying to get that message out there with those points of what we can do for you now to try to galvanize a groundswell. We haven't tried it yet, so why wouldn't we try it? Because like you said yesterday, we're building the airplane while we're flying it.
I think Yanis Varoufakis will be an important asset in this regard, because again, he's lived it. This is what Roseanne was starting to allude to.
Amen.
And so that's why, we've been talking about bringing them in. But hey, this is a great conversation, Patrick. I really appreciate you having it today. You've always been open to ideas as your friends, as your allies have proposed them, which make you who you are. And I'm just excited, and ready to to accelerate this pivot, right? Because at the end of the day, I want to be sitting a couple of years from now and celebrating the fact that we're watching the perp war of some people that most of our legion would never have thought, got the shackles on and and walking, whatever, to the federal prison, for the things that our independent counsel will be able to approve, largely because of what you've been able to put together. So the story will be told, the truth will out, right? We just have to go about it understanding who we're fighting with, and be strategically on point, in order to get there. That's the only thing.
I love it, and I'm so grateful for you. I'm so grateful for Roseanne. More minds are better than one, and never in a million years would I want to be an autocrat, man. I'm all about democracy. I'm all about dynamism. I'm all about a rising tide raises all ships. I know what the team does when all of the sum total is better. The parts are better the sum total than the individual, all that kind of stuff, right? And again, to remind everybody, man, what we're doing is we're creating exodus from corruption to resurrect the American dream. Sorry to use another biblical reference, but my God, it's so perfect at the moment, but we have to do it where people are, and you got to meet them where they're at. So it'll be really interesting and fascinating if we can track a growth model based on the new telemetry, the new trajectory, and we'll see where that goes. And plus, besides, if anybody wants to find out who I am and understand where I came from, I only landed 470 truth bombs, laying out all the villains and who they've done and everything else. So there's a whole track record of it, right?
Yeah, we're not talking about pulling those. No, exactly. We want you to go see, if you please go see them, if you will,
Right.
and everything. But hey, Patrick, just to let you know, I mean, I'm like your fullback or your left tackle. I'm picking up the blindside blitz, man. They're trying to get you every which way they can.
That's right. And to finish up with this, though, I did, again, like I said earlier in the conversation, I did reach out to Yanis, and I made this case, and I'm going to send this to Yanis as well. And I think that hopefully because what I said to Yanis is, I said, look, man, between us collectively, and I don't put me in your level, obviously, but yet you're so humble and you're such a good human being and you're looking for solutions and you have this whole apparatus and his experience, like he laid out in our truth bomb riff with Bill Black as it relates to all of the things that happen in Greece, which is still news. It's still front page news that, ultimately that because of his audience, because of what he's trying to do, the United States is the indispensable nation. Okay, it is, and he knows that. He knows it. I mean, I saw you go like this. I mean, we're all in it together, and there's a lot of things that going on. But if the United States could become up for and by the people with this collective, approach, given the problems that we have, will that have upside for the rest of the world, and maybe be something that could
Huge,
uh,
huge.
benefit the global
Yes.
community rather than what we're in the midst of? I would think that Giannis would completely agree to that, and so therefore, him being involved with us to help radiate the Clean New Deal in the United States would be a win-win. So that's what I'm trying to say, and hopefully he agrees.
Well, Patrick, in that regard, is there any way, would you be open and willing, to three-way me into the email conversation so that I have an in to be able to communicate to Giannis about some of the
Of
details of the
course, I don't have a
compliance?
problem with that. Yeah,
Yeah,
but I'm
you
going to
know,
show him this, and in fact, I'll introduce this conversation to you and what we're all about, and then you can pick up and say what you need to say. What I think we're up against with Giannis at the moment is Giannis has kind of go-to places that he goes to, and they have hundreds of thousands of views, right?
yeah,
I mean, where is his time best allocated? It's best allocated to people who can espouse and expose to hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people, what he's trying to, clarify. But what I continue to try to reveal to the rest of the world, which we've already demonstrated I'm being throttled down for, and the reason I'm being throttled down is because I have those answers that would solve the riddle to tens of millions of Americans if only they can understand what happened to them. Because at that point, I think that's when the eureka happens, and ultimately, but it's just chicken and the egg and all of the rest of it. So let's give Roseanne final commentary here. Anything you want to add to the conversation, Roseanne?
What I wanted to say was, I can't, let me say this first. I truly believe that failure is not an option, and that even though I distrusted the system, government, all authority, while I always distrusted them and wanted to do everything to get around them, I have in decades actually given people, offered to them what they need. And as recently as yesterday, I'm offering right there in front of them what they need, and they won't accept it. So, all those words, strategic plans about what we can do for people, I am 100% ready to try. Do it, because you know where I'm coming from.
Yeah.
Beat the algorithms, don't lose integrity, all of that. You said all of it, and Patrick, you heard it. You're gonna go with it, okay? But that one element, here you are telling that, here, I'm not only telling them, I got it in my hands. I'm reaching out to, here, this is what I can do for you. And they say, no, I'm gonna go over here. No, I'm not gonna, no. Okay. I have to, at that point, move away from them. Okay. Because that is, that's a kick in the head. Okay. That is a kick in the head.
Hey, let me chime in real quick. You're on a tear, and this is great. But you and I had this conversation yesterday, and I wanted to add this to the viewers out there. Look, man, all relationships are comprised of kind of two different pathways, in my opinion. One is we build each other up We help each other to grow, to thrive, to to win to a degree, whatever that is in our lives, in all of our relationships, where we work with each other to build each other up. There's also other relationships that suck all the life out of us. That because things aren't working out so well in that particular situation, that they're going to take us down. And so when you're Roseanne, for example, and God bless her, like I said at the outset, she's Mother Teresa, she's Florence Nightingale, she provides food and sustenance of truth and facts and food to people that are literally homeless on the Vegas Strip, that have gone through hell and that are collateral damage of a system, either by their own doing to some degree or society's failure as a whole in a failed state apparatus, to where when they're at that stage, they require triage, right? They require, and I experienced this, by the way, during the Occupy Wall Street movement, where, everybody was fixated and focused on the financial fraud and what Wall Street was getting away with. And then suddenly it became, because I went to 23 Occupy encampments around the country, suddenly it became, how are you going to help the homeless that are in our midst downtown and all of these cities around that have been collateral damage of this? And then it became a full-time job to do it. And it's like, okay, you're going to triage the situation of desperate people. And yet, to your point, Kevin, millions of people are desperate and just hanging on and just maybe slightly away from that hell, right? And my point to try to bring this to our viewers is, guys, we either take each other down and you can ignore it and you can go down and you can let the system depends on you not fighting back. It depends on you staying in the dark. It depends on you staying on your knees. It depends on you being weak. It depends on you being desperate. And if you are in all of those things, you're not in a position to be able to have the power, the unified force, to be able to rise to the level of this incredible, brutal darkness. And it is the light that's got to overwhelm this thing. And again, going back to the biblical scenario. So I hope I look, I just had to say that because God bless you. Because if people want to ask, think questions about our credibility, here is a woman who spends every single day of her life doing everything she can to help people in desperate need. And yet she finds the time to be able to help us all discover the truth of a system that's destroying the rest of us through deception and diabolical betrayal.
It's the right thing to do.
It is the right thing to do. And this is why we absolutely love Roseanne, but because of her integrity. But we can't lose sight. And I'm not suggesting, Roseanne, you're doing that. But so I'm just going to underline this one statement. To the extent that our fellow Americans are broken, to the extent that you're standing right in front of them, telling them, here is the information of how this happened to you, and they're not positioned to take it. It's not their fault that they were broken. It is the system that broke them. So in other words, the drain of energy has to be targeted at who did this, right? And we have to find a way to help people, even if they're not in position to be able to participate. And so I hear what you're saying. I just wanted to underline that aspect, that I don't want anyone watching to get the impression that we're down on folks who we've presented to and who haven't received our message. It's just that that's how bad the situation is that there's a lot of people in that situation. And so the way to change this is not to continue to drive the same point that they're not willing to receive, right? But to start helping them and start telling them how we're going to help them, so that as they get healthy again, as they become alive again and get out of the bed again and get off their back again, oh hell yes, the first thing they're going to do is just do whatever is left to be done at that point to make sure to hold them accountable. But we got their back on that too, because even while they're recovering, that's the first order of business once we have the president in place. So this is why we're not losing track of why we do what we do. We have been robbed. The con lays it all out. The Great Untouchables tells how it's continually happening. Right? This is the $70 trillion facts. of what happened to America, right? And we are all about restoring America to all its greatness, to make us, as Patrick pointed out, the essential nation, right? I shook my head sideways because the way America is acting in the world today has has bestowed such disgrace on what we have been. We have been the essential nation. But what have we done? We don't need to get into those weeds, but we are not acting that way today, right? And it's time that we restored that. So thank you, Patrick. Thank you, Roseanne. Powerful conversation. Love you guys.
Absolutely, absolutely. And to your point, just finally on this, look, that was my point with Roseanne, is that she
What?
demonstrates every single day, right? That no matter what she's got to deal with, that it's not the point that people don't accept the message. It's the point that she doesn't care. She's still going to do what's right, and she's still going to do what makes her whole, which is to provide food and facts, which is sustenance, no matter what. That's what she does, and that's why it keeps the engine rolling. And she saved me from this, a number of times where I was like, "Look, they're not listening. I don't want to do this anymore. It's a waste of my time. I don't care. I might have all the answers in the world, but I don't walk on water, and I'm not the savior. It's out there. Maybe let them discover it 500 years after the world's blown up, and let the future generations go. My God, they had the answers. I've gone down that path, but the message to the people out there is that you can't be in despair. You can't put your head in the sand. You can't pretend that somebody else is going to save you. You have to rise with us because we have the ability as a people, given the facts, that we can overcome the pharaohs that are betraying us. I don't know any way to think of it. In my construct, that's what they're doing. So anyway, I think we've had all the right points. Hey guys, thank you very much. We'll see where this goes. Kevin and I and Roseanne, let's continue emails. I'll put together kind of like, what I think are the talking points of things, and I'm going to try to do some new truth bombs riffs. Maybe we'll do all three together. Maybe you do them separately. We just got to keep it going, because one thing I do know about the algorithm also is the more that we feed YouTube information, and the more that people get on it, the more they do get us out there. Right now, maybe we don't talk about the $70 trillion scenario and blah, 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 and we'll see what the numbers are. But we are still growing at the moment. But it'd be interesting to see if we really start to, I hate to use the analogy, fountainhead.
That's all right. Still
Anyway,
a good word.
all right, my friends, thank you so much. Onwards and upwards, rise, war, revolt. It's not rocket science. It's racketeering. When you have the truth, you're bulletproof. This is the righteous grind. Onwards and upwards. Peace.